All right, good evening. The time is now 5:30. We'll call. We will begin with invocation by Councilman Young, followed by the pledge of allegiance.
Let's pray. Lord God, we're grateful for another day that you've given us. Lord, we ask for your wisdom as we conduct our county business. We ask, Lord, that you give us guidance in our decisions. Lord, we ask that you be with the nation. We ask that you be with our state. We ask you to be with this county. Lord, and last but not least, Lord, we ask that you give us the courage to glorify your kingdom in our daily lives. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First up is approval of the agenda. George, I'll call for a motion.
Motion approved. Second.
Mr. Rankin, second by Ms. Clark. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 7-0. All right, first we have public comments. Just as a reminder, this is a committee meeting, not a regular council meeting. The comment section for this is designed to be specific to ordinance 926. We have Ms. Nancy Garrett.
Good morning. It shows you how tired I am. Yeah, good evening. Thank you guys for giving us an opportunity to speak. I would love to have the opportunity to come in after and kind of see what all y'all have to say about themselves, but I'm just gonna go ahead. Of course, it was very long and just got to go through a small portion of it. I printed it off trying to go through and trying to understand and trying to be able to try to research and stuff like that. I actually had a friend that helped. He was kind of very much versed in this, and he actually sent me a lot of different aspects that I'd love for y'all to be able to look at. If my printer hadn't run out of ink because I printed the whole 84 pages of the other, I would have a copy for this, but I don't see it's getting kind of light there. So maybe it's something I can email to y'all or something to that effect. So, but one point I kind of wanted to try to start with was when you started with it to talk about the minimum lot size of the 21,000 square foot, like, 7-8. And I saw the asterisk beside it about staff recommendations. Going down to possibly 10,890, for the ones with the public water and sewer, and then possibly going down to 21,780 on the lots with public water and septic tank. So, and I noticed that they used, Greenwood, Greenville, and other, surrounding, counties as far as using, as a reference to what they do. So I kind of did a little research and I just basically used Greenville County more than anything. So really at this point, Greenville County's regulations are a little bit of a mess. The county council has asked the planning staff to have an effort underway called the Unified Development Ordinance, the UDO, to revise their regulations to better establish to meet constituents and developers' needs. The effort has been underway for a few years now to do that. So Greenville County's minimum lot size is actually 6,000 square feet. But however, the county has a comprehensive plan that with a land use map that specifies lot densities through the county. In the rural areas, the very rural areas that are not zoned and such as that of Greenville County, in the very rural areas, the maximum density on the land use map is 1 house per 2 acres. So I guess my point in using some of the other counties too, as I go through this, is that we don't have the tools these other counties have to, you know, all we're doing is these ordinances at this time. Because like I've said before, we don't have an up-to-date comprehensive plan, and we don't have land map use, and zoning is a whole nother discussion, I'm sure. So in those rules, that's the size that they are. Lawrence County needs such a map before establishing these regulations. Otherwise, developers can just continue to kind of do what we do, other than the protection of the ordinances. I know that y'all are hoping that'll help. But the proper tools being there for our planning commission to make these decisions is a big thing. A lot of these places in these rural areas have had community sewer systems that have failed, you know, even in Greenville County because of the way they've done it. Now the lift stations, there's failures with those at times, and like we've started with lift stations in our area, right down Sullivan Road, there's one. You have to have the concern of the environment as far as the lift stations and stuff like that. So there's a lot of issues that go into it. I'm just gonna briefly mention the traffic studies. They should be required on all roads in the county for subdivisions for more than 40 houses to meet the requirements of the South Carolina DOT Arms Manual. Several counties require these studies for 10 houses or more in a subdivision. All existing intersections within 1 mile of the subdivision access roads should be part of the study. The outcome of these studies should be implemented by the developers, which I know that y'all have that point in there. And a lot of developers will say it's too expensive. There's several different methods that other counties use to deal with the expense that do not put the cost on the developer all at once. If this is not done, the infrastructure will not keep up with the development, and the existing homeowners in the county will be paying for the necessary upgrades when the developers have left. Greenville County and Spartanburg counties have this problem with not keeping up with infrastructure and are now talking about new taxes on everyone to cover the road upkeep. And I have had a huge concern about our road system where these developments have started, where the grading started and stuff like that. I brought that before just because of the public safety issue. Like we already have a public safety issue, but we're gonna have a major public safety issue in our area with roads that are not large enough for 2 cars to pass, with these large developments coming in. And our county doesn't have the taxes to pay for the roads. And allowing all these people to move into these developments with the roads in the condition they're in is a huge public safety matter. We're just very concerned. There are people in our community that are very familiar with Greenville County, Horry County, Charleston County, Richland County regulations. Greenville County is really not a good example of a good set of ordinances. They are looking at York County regulations in their UDO effort. Consider giving knowledgeable community citizens the opportunity to work with Lawrence County planning staff to come up with a set of ordinances that will not meet everyone's expectations. We know that, you know, I mean, that's not possible. There's too many people, but we'll have reasonable compromise that people can live with. Otherwise, Lawrence County will be like Greenville County in the future, sprawl, unhappy communities such as Five Forks, Fairview Road. We'll lose our character, and unfortunately, a lot of times that brings, you know, people to take actions against the county. One other point I was going to make was the time for subdivision applications acceptance to final approval should be at least 60 days. Staff should not accept applications that are not complete, including traffic studies, and meets all the regulations of the subdivision. Applications that do not meet regulations should be rejected and not accepted for the property for a period of 6 months. Any application that's reached the planning commission that does not meet the regulations would be rejected and not permitted for that property for 6 months. Applications should be posted on the county website no later than 1 week after the application is accepted. No changes in the application should be accepted 2 weeks after the application. If the application for the subdivision is denied by the planning commission, that property or that subdivision cannot be applied for another subdivision for a period of 6 months. If you don't do at least the last 2 items, the planning staff will be overworked trying to deal with constant changes and trying to find failures to meet regulations. Greenville County has the problem now. So I just want to implore, I just want to speak with all you just from a very open heart. I really want our county to take their time. I really want our county to grow. It is absolutely, we've tried to say that over and over. We're not here to stop growth. We're here to watch our county develop in a very safe manner, a very good manner. And I think this right now is a huge point for this council to step back and really take our time in what we're doing. And because if we don't, then where are we gonna be? You know, we've already got public safety issues. We've already got, and I just want y'all to make sure that you take your time with this, because it's a lot to read over. It's a lot to ingest, trying to figure, go through it all. And I just don't want us to be in a rush. And I would love, absolutely love, if we had the other tools that are implemented that are supposed to be there for this county and for this planning commission to be able to do their job properly. So I thank y'all for your time.
All right. Ready for the hot seat? And people come, Mr. Roy. What? Do you want to join us up here in case there's a question about the 2-year-old for your commission? You don't have to answer any question you don't want to answer. But I saw you with a bunch of sticky notes, so I figured you might have to look out. No, mainly, as we go through this, if there's something that relates to the planning commission, you have to comment on that for sure. So we'll make a few comments as we get settled. On the timeline of things, in theory, now we've been working on this for a few months, but we started working on 9 and 10, what, a year and a half ago, probably. And some work was done, and we didn't have the staff we have now, and different set of eyes, different input. We worked on that, and now, once again, I would appreciate citizens coming to speak, because nobody showed up when we were doing 9-10, and it was approved December of 21, so 9 months ago, roughly. And we had no input, so we were going with what we had, what research we were doing, what input we did have from the planning commission. They did pretty well, put that one together for us, and we appreciate that, and we tweaked it a little bit. So, I mean, honestly, it was working, but it wasn't to its full potential like this one is. I think I mentioned on multiple occasions, we've had 0 variances granted since 9-10 was approved. This ordinance here will make some changes to some of the structural part of it, and hopefully increase the desire of council to have structural growth to ensure that we are getting proper plans in place before we just approve the studies, and giving the commission the tools and the planning department the tools to do their job. And we do recognize the comp plan will definitely help, the land use map will definitely help, and zoning is definitely something that is being discussed on a regular basis. If we had zoning, we could have fixed this 6 months ago. But the county citizens on 2 separate occasions staunchly said that. That was 20 years ago, and we're in a new decade now. And we're looking at things in a different light, so hopefully that will be different this time. So what I'd like to do is first to offer, if any council member has a question they'd like to start with Ms. Wargo. If not, I would like to start through the sections, and as we get to a part, you can ask a question. I didn't believe that was too bad, but there are questions I think we all have. Does anybody have any initial statements? If not, we'll start coming to it. I would just like to say thank you for your hard work with all the staff, Ms. Cruikshank, Mr. Satterfield, Ms. Wargo, Mr. Dixon, Brother Stephen, but all that had input and time in this. I recognize the time y'all spent and the hour you poured over it. Thank you all for that. All right. So, section 1. You got any comments, Mr. Benson? And I'll let you speak first, Ms. Wargo. Is there anything in particular you want to point out before we ask questions? And just for the record, as y'all read through this, you can see the stricken language. And anything in red is obviously new. That'll help us as we go through knowing what was previous and what is being deleted and what is being added. Nothing on second. Are there any questions? As we go through this, we're looking for substance. I know they're still reviewing for grammatical errors by all means, and we'll continue to do that. So we don't necessarily point any of those out as we go, but any kind of substance, that's what we're looking for tonight. So we'll go in the first 12 pages. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that section? One thing I would like to point out, mainly the definitions, I encourage you to read those, make sure they're applicable to Lawrence County, and to note, and it does state the jurisdiction. There's some confusion sometimes. We can only govern outside municipal limits. So not, this ordinance will not pertain to anything inside any municipal limits of the county, incorporated municipal limits of the county. So do keep that in mind, because I have gotten a few calls of things that are going on in certain cities, and we don't have any jurisdiction over any of those. Next up, we have Division 2. Page 13.
I just want to point out one thing on page 12, the definition for variance. I need to change language there. It refers to the Board of Zoning Appeals. This came from an area that has zoning. And Board of Zoning Appeals said that'll be changed to planning commission oversee.
All right. Page 13 through the first half of 16. And also division requirements. Section 8, 559, historical and cultural resources. And there's C says, and that it just addresses human remains, nothing nearest law enforcement office, and director of historical resources within 2 working days. Have state archives and history. Are they required to notify the county at all, or do they just go to the? They just have to report to the state agencies that they have to report to.
From what I've seen, it is within the state's purview, and they should notify us that they're going to be stopping work, you know, for whatever reason.
We got some
they
language
found
that.
It is under the jurisdiction of the state.
Right, yeah, any of that would be jurisdiction of the state, but they, when you put a clause in here to notify the county of such, fines, I guess you'd say. That'd be appropriate.
Right.
We've already ran into that recently, and we were not notified about the benefit, so we might want to have that. But recognize that we don't necessarily have jurisdiction over that. Review for us section 8, 569.
Subdivisions?
I just want to make, or let me, my interpretation is the family exemption, basically, so we're requiring that if they're gonna proceed on that division, it must meet the current ordinance, even if they don't divide it today. That accurate?
Actually, I'm gonna have to find on this one. This section was, county attorney, Mr. McShane, so that was.
I know we run into problems periodically.
We did have a problem trying to put together to find legal language that was suitable, because we found out that there were other places that were having problems with the language that they had. So we have to go back and work on this.
And that's only team research.
Yeah, the wording is, I tried to make it look as broad as it was long, so that there was flexibility, which probably in a family division situation is probably going to end up with variances being requested. So you got to have a starting point. We had language in the sense that you could not subdivide it at one time. And then we looked at, I think, Carol brought, what if I got 1,000 acres? You know, so you're telling me I'm preparing a tract, I give my son 500 acres, I can't subdivide it. So it was too restrictive in that sense. There was also restrictions of how many times you could subdivide. Again, if you're talking about a 10-acre tract versus a 1,000-acre tract, it's night and day. We try to give some flexibility there, that you got to meet some dimensional requirements, but again, you could ask for a variance to say, you know, that's too restrictive. I think it does give the planning commission some, and there's no easy way to do it, especially when you start talking about family. But you didn't define family.
And I think at least the issues I've seen the planning commission run into in the past is, father needed, or let the son put a house right beside him on a single property. People age, people pass, son lives in the father's house, and now they want to sell their old house. They can't subdivide the property because it doesn't meet the regulations. That'd be the one concern that I'm trying to address.
Problem that we're running into is whether it's family or not family. The county is allowing, allow more than one mobile home on a parcel. Well, the parcel meets regulations now. But then they come back and they want a variance to split that in different parts. And split it in parts, either one meets the requirement for this. So there probably needs to be some language in there, whether it's the family exemption part or everywhere else, that if you're going to put, should be one residence per tract. If the tract is big enough, make sure you put it in a place to where if you want to come back and divide it up later, it's available to divide up. If you read the language of that variance in there, you're going to get very, very few variants approved, because it says unless you have a hardship. Well, if you stuck two mobile homes on there and now you come back and you want to split it, is that a hardship? That's not a hardship.
Is that addressed in this ordinance, or is that addressed in the mobile home ordinance? Because we stripped the mobile home out of this.
It's not addressed anywhere.
Okay.
That's the problem, that the county allows more than one unit. And that could go for a home too. So in the family exemption part, you could have permanent structures in there, and they want to come back and split it up.
There, we put something there, one dwelling per lot. Is that
We
doable?
have that as number 1,
Where-
under I-1.
Okay,
I'm sorry, page 16. I think Mr. Warner's concern is following that, or how many times they'd be allowed to divide it, that might be an issue as far as the variance rate.
I don't think we care how many times they divide it, as long as the division meets the current ordinance. And they're not allowed to put more than one residence on there, or if they do, they're knowingly that they can't come back later and expect a variance.
So just to, Mr. Kirk, page 16, very top number 1. It's only under 10 division, but it says each contract, remaining contract shall have a maximum density of 1 dwelling per parcel. Could we make that a rule together? So, for all parcels?
See why not?
Let's do that. Unless somebody has a different. Obviously, multifamily be a little different when you start putting townhomes or duplexes, but single family home per lot. Would fix that issue. Commissioner Smith. Sure.
Just to be clear, I don't know what you just said, but it seems like to me, if you limit one residence per parcel, you're back to the acreage issue, what is 500 acres. The issue that we've had is you've got a parcel of land where 2 structures are on there, 2 septic tanks, 2 power hookups. They would have subdivided that. To me, the language ought to say any residential structure going on a parcel, each residential structure should meet the minimum qualifications of the parcel requirements.
So what I'm looking at, I see what you're saying. You're talking about existing structures.
This is all new, but
I'm worried about future structures.
I think it covers both. Any residential structure, any structure that's going on a parcel of land, the parcel that's going on should meet the minimum requirements of the parcel. You understand what I'm saying? Because
And we'd be requiring them to have that surveyed and created in parcel is what we would be looking to do moving in the future. And then obviously there are going to be some out there, they're going to have to be addressed. I mean, it's not going to help us a lot with existing issues, but it will prevent future ones.
Yeah, stop splitting today, because I think the problem we're gonna have on the door, that's still allowed, so today, somebody can go and put 2 mobile homes in a single parcel. 10 years from now, they're gonna want to subdivide it, can't do it, so as we're trying to deal with the ones that are out there, we've got to do this, continue to have.
That's why I guess we're trying to put a tourniquet on the stop. There is going to be some triage from what we have today.
Yeah, stop it today, and then you deal with the ones that are already out.
But you don't like moving forward, would that help future issues, being able to require one dwelling per?
In my opinion, I don't know if Mr. Attorney maybe help with the language, but to me, the language needs to specify you need a residential dwelling on a parcel that meets the requirements of the ordinance.
Correct.
Not necessarily one residence per parcel, because then, I mean,
Yeah, it's got to be the ordinance, of course,
right.
but we would get
I'm
rid
not trying to
of.
muddy the water, I just want to make sure.
I think what you're requiring is that if you're gonna put a residence on there, you're gonna make the owner subdivide.
I would think that that's the best way to handle it.
Can we do that?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good.
Good point.
I believe that would be best, given the issues we're dealing with today, and then, like I said, y'all can keep getting variances, because unfortunately, there's probably more than we know about out there. And I don't think we can really do much language to address. It can definitely prevent it happening in the future.
That'll go back to permitting too, somebody comes in,
Right.
permit.
That's where the.
That's gonna have to, yeah, that's going to be tackled at that stage.
Any other questions? We're up through Division 4 at the moment. Up 16. right, we'll move into Division 5, which is the procedures for the minor subdivisions. All right, we'll keep on with number 6. We'll get into the application process for major subdivisions. Can you talk to us a little bit about the technical review committee and the plans on that?
The technical review committee would be established as an oversight review group for not only the completeness check of the application once it comes in, to make sure that all the items are within the application that should be there, but also for review of all the technical standards, and it would consist of several staff members based on their skills and their departments that they work in. So it could be one individual from the police department, one from fire department, one from the LCDC, one from engineering, which we don't have right now, stormwater, planning, public works, and roads and bridges is usually the individual staff members that are there to review the applications when they first come in. So what would happen is when an application came in, it would be routed to all these departments, and each one of those people that is a member of that TRC would review it on their own to make sure that the application is complete, has everything that is needed on all the plans. And if it doesn't meet those requirements, they would get in touch with the technical review committee coordinator, and all the comments are gathered together in one letter, and that goes out to the applicant to inform him of what he still needs to make that application complete. Then there's a time period for that applicant to resubmit everything that he needs before it goes to the formal technical review committee meeting, to where each of those members of the departments will need to meet once a month to review every application that's coming through for approval. And it's not until all those questions are answered by each person from every department reviewing that approval is given. If there is anything to where it also gives the applicant a chance to meet in person with every single member of these departments to finish up with any questions or any outstanding issues that they have. And it gives staff the opportunity to hand over a more complete, if it needs a variance and it's going to planning commission, we can provide planning commission with a more complete application. The knowledge that somebody from every department has reviewed it and provided all the comments before going into planning commission for their final review and approval.
Thank you for that explanation. I did notice 576, it says there shall be no fee required for the pre-application meeting. And it could be in here, I could have easily missed it. At what point do we begin charging fees for submittals? Is it the plat? Is it the construction site plan? I didn't see anywhere where we start the fee process.
We're actually looking at that right now, and putting together a fee schedule. The pre-application meeting would come before the TRC.
And I definitely know there should be one day in numbers.
Right.
Somewhere in August.
It would start immediately with I'm sure that the building department has fees for the permits. But as far as the review stages, it would be the preliminary plat. They could take the preliminary plat and the construction site plan together if they want to for approval. That would save them time and money, hopefully. If they have to resubmit with a new document, construction site plan, each of those stages, the construction site plan and the final plat review, they would be charged for that. Something that's done everywhere, every surrounding county, municipality. We just haven't done it. So we haven't had that revenue coming in for staff's time and staff's efforts to make it happen for them. Plus, with the TRC, I think it would make it a smoother process, faster process, maybe even a faster process to get the approval through for the applicant.
We're seeing that, here in the future. The next question I have is in 579, for the construction site plan. I think I see it several other places. There's reference to proposed developments being submitted to the building department. Are we using multiple departments to funnel the process, or would that be more appropriate to run through the planning office?
You do it either way.
Okay.
I'm used to seeing it go through the building department first, and the intake people, and then they would make copies of everything that's submitted, and they would electronically the applicant would have to give them an electronic copy. So that electronic copy would go to the technical review committee coordinator, and the copies that the applicant has to submit, the hard copies, would go to each member of the technical review committee. Perhaps there's a couple that would not need those hard copies, that would be like their school district, perhaps the police department, to where their comments might not be as, as lengthy as somebody from the building department or public works. They would need the hard copies to really look at. But generally speaking, it does go through the building department, and then it's funneled to the planning department. And then the planning department takes the ball from there, is in charge of the TRC and the review of the project. And the comments going back and forth between staff and the applicant go through the planning department until they receive approval, then the ball is handed back over to the building department to go through having their plat signed, the final plat signed.
So I guess my concern and my reason for that question of the process is you've had your preliminary meeting, you've had a preliminary plat, and then one random day a developer shows up in Mr. Bobo's office and they don't even know what it's for. Now obviously somebody from their team would probably let TRC be in the know, but the person sitting in the front desk may or may not, and I would just streamline the process. I just don't want there to be confusion sending people from multiple departments, or they come back to your office and say, well, I turned that in 2 weeks ago from in the building department, I hadn't heard anything. I guess that's my fear of the flow.
No, and it's reasonable. There's two more things that we're going to be putting into action. And one is to definitely make sure that there is not only electronic files here and there on each project, that there is a hard copy file, one for every project. And looking at it being housed in the planning department, we actually have a room for it. And if we have any information requests, they'll be coming in, we'll be able to have what they need put together. Also, the TRC having the coordinator coordinate everything, the comments between the staff and the applicant helps a lot with keeping the confusion level down. We're going to look at, hopefully we're going to be getting a permitting track system that links all the departments together. And when you go through this process for TRC, the review process, the software that we've been looking at is something that I'm personally familiar with. I think other people, other staff members might be also. And it populates the whole process. So it'll let you know when the applicant submits whatever he needs to submit, he'll be able to tune in, go onto it live and see where it is, at what stage of review, because that software is keeping track of that. And it even reminds the person reviewing it, the member of the TRC, you've got 3 days left to review this project. You've got 2 days left to review this project. So it is a timed program that we go through, and it will not allow for the approval of the project until all those comments are met by the TRC, so that the application is complete, the project is complete, then we can go ahead, it populates into the approval process, It also helps, in the past, when you work on a system like we have, a lot of times you'll have developers or owners of property that'll call and say, you know, what's going on? My engineer said he got these plans in and y'all weren't able to answer the phone and we haven't got approved yet, what's going on? And when we tell them, well, we told him he needed to submit this or that, whatever plan it was, and we still haven't gotten a response from him yet. They can go in, the owner can go into that program and see exactly what was done. You can see where we asked for that information and that his engineer never submitted it. Or they can see that the engineer did submit it, the staff never reviewed it, or never got the time to review it. So they can see exactly what's going on. So it keeps everybody honest. And once again, it helps with the flow of the review.
This is a 29 working days thing, and I'd hate for it to end up in one department and plan commission, because the next step plan commission, if they hadn't relayed with the plan commission that this is coming, that's just, I feel like there's places that fall through the cracks, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So if y'all can discuss that next time y'all meet together.
Sometimes you can get down to maybe just two comments that haven't been met by one person in one of the TRC, one department. So it's the TRC coordinator's job to get in touch with them and say that they meet this yet. Okay. They didn't, then we condition an approval that they meet this. If it's something that's not that difficult for the applicant to do, sometimes you can condition the approval on that being met. But generally speaking, if there's several outstanding comments from that committee, you're not going to approve that project until it gets down to where it's something that's pretty simple to handle or that can be conditioned out.
All right. Next thing, one important part of this, 850D traffic impact study. Walk us through the minimum requirements that.
Okay, this came directly from Greenville County. As Harris mentioned. We've been having a problem with this because sometimes the question has come up, when do we need it? And we just needed some guidelines to something that would trigger that action. So this is based on the number of units that are going to be using those roadways in the area. I think they're pretty conservative. And a lot of the traffic, came from ARMS, the South Carolina Department of Transportation, as far as the right of way widths and traffic backside also. So we took Greenville County to be honest. It was actually one of the shorter ones also that was easy to implement.
Out of curiosity, there's definitely things referenced here that don't necessarily change the subdivisions. Are we going to implement this traffic impact requirement for all of the items listed in this list?
In the table?
That's going to be the coast department, I would say. All right. Yes, sir.
On number 3 for that, we're limiting it to within a half-mile radius of the property now. As you know, in this county, a half mile is not that far. So what we added in the last one was impacting intersection. So an impacting intersection, I'll just take an example, Hunts Bridge. We had one on Hunts Bridge, but it was probably within a half mile of Durban. But it was well past that when you got all the way down into Fountain Inn. And most of that traffic was going to be dumped down in Fountain Inn right there, Highway 14. Or it's kind of a mess down there. So I don't know if it can be expanded to where we're capturing more troubled areas. Because when we start getting up in the Fountain Inn area, Highway 14 and Durban is a horrible intersection there. And a lot of this traffic is going to be dumped out into there. And
Who would who make the decision on the, what term you impacted intersections, that was out there.
Impact intersection. We had a meeting with the gentleman at DOT. He said that's pretty much, they won't, the DOT will not implement that. That would have to be something the county would. And we notify them what it is. He said he is aware of what each county requires. So when they contact them to do traffic impacts, we would notify them, hey, this is the requirement that Orange County has.
Oh, I guess what I said, who would govern which intersection will be impacted, which one will not?
I would, a radius, yeah, you'd have to put a radius, I would put that into, where maybe roads and bridges or. I mean, you pinpoint, it's pretty easy to sit there and say, okay, well, here's where the subdivision is gonna be. That road might be 2 miles long, they gotta go one way or the other. And so if it's only a half a mile, you're not capturing this one, you're not capturing this, they're going there, they're going one way or the other.
And I agree with that, I guess.
That's what it's doing.
Yeah, the best way to govern it, because in some, you're gonna have that in some cases, and in other cases, let's just pretend ZF was a 2,000 home subdivision. Was the red light at 101 and 14 impacted by all those people if they were coming to Chuck E. Cheese and Lawrence? Like, who makes the, that's what I'm trying to figure out. We'd have to draw a line to say, all right, this is what an impacted subdivision is versus not.
Did you never arrange this?
Mr. Dennis, yes.
I don't know what the language is, the words. So somewhere the roads are defined, arterial road,
Yes.
could you take it to the closest main road, so in this case, it'd be Highway 14, is that acceptable? That's the one thing we keep hearing is it's piling up, you've got all these, what the right word is, but the smaller roads feed into the larger ones, and that's where you've got the congregation of all the traffic.
You know what page are the road names on?
They're on page 10. If we do arterial though, a lot of our areas, that would be a huge, that could be a huge area. That would have to cover.
Maybe a major collector.
Even if we set a major intersection, what would we consider a major intersection?
It's all for them considerations.
Not be something on a case by case basis where the developer before it does its traffic impact account and say, well, here's where the subdivision is going to be, and the traffic's going this way and this way, and this is the one we want, this is the one we want.
Here on that, while that's, probably the best way to put it, here on that was now you put a human factor in it on making a decision on what's what, and if I make you go do 4, and then I make somebody else do 3, is that fair to you to have to do 4, and they only have to do 3? I feel like we're gonna be opening ourselves up for issues there.
What about overlap?
So,
Overlap with some areas where we have development, we live pretty close to each other, and others that way. We gotta consider overlap too, right? You have to make the same person do the same study on the same intersection.
or they'll use the same consultant and not pay.
From that same thought, should we not be including traffic studies already approved subdivision?
Well, that's the problem is you can approve them all day. You can approve 10 tomorrow until they come out of the ground. And there's several on Mr. Shackel's list right now that I know are coming to fruition. So it's hard to penalize somebody that might actually have the capital to bring one to fruition because there's somebody lingering out there that hadn't built theirs. That would be fair. I think we're gonna have to stick to a radius on this. What's your opinion?
Well, I think the definition gives you a lot of guidance as to what you're defining as an impacted intersection.
does it have a traffic light, does it have, what does it have at this point in time? I think there probably could be some tweaking of that to kind of get in what Royer said. What intersection is being impacted because I'm turning left instead of turning right, even though the best way to go would be turning right, but 500 cars are going to the left. So, and I think trying to blend that with the definition of streets and roads is going to be difficult to determine which intersection is really being impacted and where is it. It could be 5 miles down the road before it gets impacted. There's nothing between where my subdivision is and where the next main road is. So I think that's, it probably needs some work, but I think the definitions, which we haven't had, are very helpful in that respect.
All right, I'm gonna amend the list of things we would like to continue to review on to that. Anybody have anyone have please speak up if you have questions, comments? Moving on, page 20 still. I do like that the utility plan is in here, letter F, under 850 or 580. The proposed utility lines, are you going to require that to be approved by the utility supplier? Or is that just going to be something that the developers will have to draw up?
Yeah, the developer would have to check with that. I mean, we're obviously gonna be end up checking it also to ensure it's.
I guess what my question is, when they give it to you, are you going to have to go to build your Washington County Water Sewer? Are you going to have to go to him and make sure it's okay? Or are you going to require him to get prior approval from the utilities before they bring you the plan?
Jeff,
What do you
do
prefer?
they do this already or?
They sort of come to us, I think, concurrently. Some get ahead of us, some do not. We would prefer to see it as soon as possible. And we won't hold you up. I mean, we'll be able to meet your time frame. And if we're brought in as part of the TRC at some level, that's a good way for us to check that box that it meets our requirements as well. So we can work with wherever y'all land.
You will for now next time. You'll check with some of the utilities, power, gas, and see what their preference is. Because I guess my personal preference, I love for them to already have approached the utilities and have an approval before they even come to us. Because there's no sense in y'all going through all of this and then turning it over and then going, yeah, we can't do that. We don't have water there. I mean, they're not that you don't do that, you work hard to get it what we need, but there are areas of the county that you don't have the infrastructure. It would be a waste of everybody's time if we got all the way to the next to last requirement and it'd be shot down because of that. So I think I would prefer to see it pre-approved before it comes to the county, by the utility.
And if you stick with some sort of TRC process.
I definitely would like that included.
And we're near the top.
Yeah.
So things below that don't really get looked at until things above it maybe get approved. I don't know if it has to be sequential like that, but that way we're near the beginning of our part in that process.
Okay.
All right, next public notice. A few things circling here, not they are references. There are references in here for industrial projects. And there are definitions somewhere on in here about the size of that industrial project. Is that something we currently require commission approval on? Because I don't believe that it is. And I think we need to take it out, and I'll tell you why. And commercial, which when I hear commercial, I consider stuff like the shopping center, Walmart, Tractor Supply, Philo, all that stuff. When I hear industrial, I think of our plants, CF, Walmart, all of them. The problem with trying to get, and there's some language in here about a industrial park. So we have a private entity building one right now, on 3 to 5.
I've seen 5 different, possible building applications for that one park. The problem is those folks that are building those parks never know, what they might build out to. As a matter of fact, you have to decide to build out, that he can tell you Hunter Industrial was what the first design they ever made, it ended up that way. Because the industrial prospects that are being recruited all have different needs. Somebody might need 100,000 square foot office space, another might need 1 million square foot of warehouse. On the Walmart, 1.3 million. It'd be hard to require Connexion to have provided a plan prior to. There's so many dynamics. Can we strike the industrial stuff out of this?
That's a good example. CF Transmission sits where there used to be a road. You dug the road up because the plant was so large.
Right.
When that was originally designed, didn't.
And that could have easily been 3 or 4 different
Absolutely.
entities.
But what about subdivision where, we talked about being notified, and I've observed in Greenville County, they do post signs when a commercial, like Walmart or any of those places are coming available near their neighborhood. Because they want to know.
And I know this happens to be in the public notice front. I'm not necessarily opposed to a notice.
Okay. that's
But when
what
we
I-
get on into section, and I didn't highlight it everywhere because I already highlighted it that early.
Okay,
Let's go find one. There are other, when we get into this section, Division 9, I mean, there are places where it talks more about the requirements of an industrial development.
okay,
I would be willing to consider the public notice part, but I don't think we need to be approving or disapproving industrial subdivisions.
oh, I just thought we were just gonna make sure they
I'm okay with that.
about the law and provide the information so they would know.
And then they do have to come, I mean, they still come, once they have when an industrial project comes, and picks a site, they still have to design the building, the code, I mean, they still have to jump through all the hoops. But there's references in there to an industrial subdivision, which would be an example, Connexion, Hunter Industrial. I can't remember one in Greenville right this second off the top of my head, but they change by the day sometimes, and I don't think it wouldn't be fair to the owner of that park to hold them to, if we said, or if we approved 100,000 square foot space and they get lucky and somebody comes in and wants to put a 1 million square foot facility, which would be phenomenal, employee count, tax revenue, they have to say no, because we've only approved 100,000 square feet. Like, I don't think industrial subdivision is something that we can govern at this level. Posting, I can get on board with the specific project. And it does say right here, industrial project. But when we get deeper in here and it says industrial subdivision, that's the part I'm concerned with.
Okay, now, I'm concerned about the notice.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't.
Okay,
I'm not-
all right,
I'll tell you what comments when we get to it.
Okay. So does anybody have any comments on Division 7, which is the public notice section? I know that's been some debate. Highlight, looking at 2 by 3 foot signs with 4 foot post. Even governance sign shall be white, having red, orange, black text, and with 4 inches in size. And what it has to say.
Mr. Chairman, section 586, the sign must remain in place until the project has received final approval. Would we want to extend that further for sake of the citizens around that are still curious as to what the development is?
So I know when we jump ahead with this question, final approval, what's the timeline, time requirement after final approval for them to make a move? 12 months? I think it's 12 months to have a final report. Is that right?
Yes.
The norm is probably 2 years before the actual construction starts, because they're usually in a large subdivision, putting in infrastructure right at that point in time. And that takes time to put in water, sewer, roads.
What kind of timeline are you thinking?
Yeah, we're gonna be looking, as we're getting closer to that in here, as to whether you all want to change that, because I think we have it at 12 months right now. And it might want to be 24 months, to give more time, it's up to y'all. Yeah, once we-
Okay, questions on that? What kind of timeline do you think?
I prefer that.
So the sign would be after 24 months.
After approval,
Okay.
is that what you recommend?
Yes.
Any other questions on or comments on the public notice requirements? All right, next is the review process, Division 8 for the major subdivisions.
I can bring this up at this point. The reason for wanting to review commercial and industrial subdivision is we have a lot going in that we don't even know. Going in.
Give me a section. Do you have a section over your front?
Okay, section 8-590. Okay, so we do have commercial and industrial subdivision in there to be able to review by TRC. It doesn't mean that we're in the full process, especially with an industrial development. What we'd like to do is, and we've already talked to the LCDC about this, we'd like them to submit whatever's coming in, be able to have TRC look at it and know that it exists and where it's going. And perhaps the fire department might have some extra comments on something that needs to be done. But what would happen was we would take those comments and just shoot them back to LCDC, and they would at least have comments from each department. We would be aware of what's going in, where it's going, what is going to be the impact to that area, because right now, we don't know, even with.
Do we not announce location on third reading of all of our?
They're usually attached by second reading as far as the description of the property, where it's going to go.
So we do have a process that we announce. Now, whether we keep up with it is a different story. And then my other problem is I'm going to use a great example that we've been dealing with. It's public. There's a project that's been trying to come to Lawrence County for 12 years, 14 years. How far are we up?
Going on 13 years.
So 15 years ago, they made an application, and it's a large, very large industrial prospect. It'd be great to have them by all means. But are we going to tie up that area for 15 years just because they still have interest? I mean, industrial, when we start talking about industrial prospects, it changes every day.
I understand, but we're gonna have to have some kind of, we're gonna have to meet halfway, because there is no way that we can plan for the county if we don't know what is coming.
Let me add this, I think that information is there, and I think that's something we found in going through this, is a lot of this information exists in the county, it's just that it's not connected. You know, Council's got 3 readings on the industrial project. That's a public document. Now, the fact that information is not in the system, it's there, but it's not communicated.
But
We're not communicating that information from one department to another.
And this is kind of, so that'll actually answer my question. All right, making the point I'm trying to make. You want to know what industries are going where. Okay, this referenced an industrial park. So when they built Connexion, they have no clue what's going in that park. No idea. I bet you ask them right now, they don't know what's going in there, because they're still building it out and they're still marketing it, and it could be anything, just about anything. So it's the folks that, and we're fortunate to have a private entity want to build an industrial park in our county. That does not happen everywhere we're blessed. But if we had to make them jump through all kinds of crazy hoops, then that kind of thing would happen. And like, once again, they don't know, they have no idea.
The only reason why we were doing this is to allow for staff to review it and provide comments, and it would be, it's still being handed back over to LCDC to bring it through the approval stages. It's more of an information a source of information for staff members, and as mentioned, there might be something that LCEDC didn't. We might not know what it's going to be, but we know there's something industrial that's going to be there, so now we'll be made aware of it, and we might have some questions or comments. But if we go back to, probably Jonathan, so that he would have them, and whenever it comes to approval, and he goes through that, he takes it.
Probably industrial didn't come to us when they come to look here. They don't, I mean, I don't know if they've ever come directly to the county, and stuff. That's not how it works.
But even
But what
a
I'll be glad
commercial,
to make sure you have a list, I mean, if the main intent is to have a knowledge of the projects that are coming, we make that happen with a phone call in the morning. That's not difficult, but we can make it, we don't do some industrial subdivisions and projects. An individual project, we can have a discussion, but industrial subdivision is, you're talking, is possible.
as far as commercial goes, they come in right now into our building department, and building departments are approving those. So once again, Public Works planning doesn't have any knowledge of what's being approved. So that's one thing I'm speaking with Mr. Bippo about, is us reviewing that also, so that first of all, it wouldn't be so much of a burden on one department for the approval of it. And if we get all the comments, make sure that everybody's on board with it. As far as
Yeah, I mean, I have a problem with commercial prospect homes. Now this is in the city, so it would not affect us necessarily, but the most recent would be all of the stuff on Walmart. You got your restaurants came, they're building a dental office, like that would be a commercial development. And they were, but once again, they have parcels for sale. I bet you he didn't know that again, there's a dental office and two restaurants there. I mean, that's the only thing I'm concerned with. I don't want to hinder any
Yeah,
developer.
tenant finish out, we would need to see, it would have to be something in the beginning stages. You know, we're just first developing this, clearing ground for it. That's what we're more concerned about. And tenant finish outs are something that are, it's very easy to, usually pretty easy to approve for building departments.
Let's just make sure we strip any reference to an industrial subdivision. Any more questions on the Division A major subdivision review process? Nine is approval. We got review and then we got approval. Like this section, sorry, wait, I guess it's right here. I believe I read in here that you're requiring the developer to present you with pre-approved lots for septic. Did I read that correctly?
Where was this?
That's that's where it is. Yeah,
Oh,
the
okay.
septic tanks are to be installed in order for the plat to be approved prior issuance of septic tank permits by SCDA. The following note would need to be added to the plat.
Actually, Dale and I had quite a few conversations about this. There's a lot of statements that should actually not only be on the construction site plan, but on the plats also that are not there, you know, as far as for management of open space.
I'm not concerned about the note whatsoever being added to that. My question is, if I was building a 100-home subdivision out in the country, and it's going to be, we're going to get wells, and I'm going to be getting water from water sewer, and they're going to all be on septic. Do I have to have all those lots perk tested and permits before I can submit you the plan? Is that the way I read that?
Is that my person, Dale? Dale? Yeah. As far as septic tanks go, plat and the construction site plan approval. Do they require that all of the lots are tested?
It is a requirement currently that they have a septic tank permit before we approve a planted lot. So,
Do all the lots have to be tested?
That's for final approval, right?
Yeah. Well,
that would be correct, yes.
Because this is reference preliminary plat, this is under the section, says preliminary plat, construction site plan.
I see what you're saying, that perhaps it should be under the final plat approval.
I don't know, that's wrong.
Normally,
You gotta know before you get too far down the line.
Normally, the way it works with DDEC is you take the plat down to them with what your plan is. They will come out, survey the area, they do not perk test each site. Now, you would not get a septic tank permit, so you actually put a tank. You're not gonna put that in until after you build a home. So they usually give you a letter from DHEC that says this is suitable for septic tanks. They may not, I've never had them do all of them. And they may do periodic ones, some they can't even get to, because they may be, they may be full of trees, brush and stuff. So normally they'll give you a kind of a generic letter, and then you're doing a measure, taking lots.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Sure. I do think the law has recently changed on that, because there has been some situations where projects were developed, lots sold, and didn't perk. And I think now, it may be affect July 1st, if the development is over 10 lots size, you might have to have a soils engineer do a study and confirm that the property would perk. I'm not positive on that, I hadn't read the law, but I do think there's some things in place now that address larger developments.
All right, we will add that to the list of things to check on. And I definitely have to check on it. You know, follow the state law, but I think when this report is talking about we need to let them DX approval. Now, like I said, I don't think requiring every single lot, that's a big to do. And then you're gonna have folks that might buy 2 or 3 lots and make bigger houses, and you never know what you're gonna have. But let's check that law, and Jeff, if you haven't, can send it to us, that'd be, I will try to track it down. Okay.
I'm actually wondering what,
Oh, yeah, single home for sure.
They come out.
This is
And
major,
they give you, and they stick you out.
and this is specifically for major subdivision, so that's 10 plus. All right.
I'm wondering if this section actually needs to be under, and I don't know if Dale can answer this once again, under the final plat section and not the preliminary plat. Is this something that they need for preliminary plat approval?
I would think we need something on the preliminary front end of this subdivision. But we need to research, as Jeff said, what current law has been changed. Because certainly on a major subdivision, as Jim said, they're not going to perk every lot. But they generally try to do enough of perk test on that parcel of land to feel, assured that it's all perk. So. But I do think I would prefer to be on the front end to protect the buyer.
I think that also give an opportunity in the DX situation where it's probably not gonna work. New individuals, you will have to have a system for the entire area. That happens a lot, typically around lake areas or areas with water, streams and stuff like that there. Or there's a lot of rock, they pretty well know from soil information, whether or not you're in an area that you could hit rock, you could hit soil that's not conducive to septic tank individually. And I've seen a lot of them going toward probably not gonna work on individual lots, so you better go ahead and build a septic system.
You won't get a building permit, Mr. Vogel, unless you have a septic tank. Septic permit.
And it would, I hope so. But I guess the thing is, we just want to get the word down the line.
That's
It's not
different.
gonna- Yeah, I'm not concerned with once we get to that point. It's just, if y'all wait 6 months looking at it, and then the 25% of the lots won't hurt, I mean, it'd be a waste of time. All right, any other questions on that section? And we look forward to that review and then bringing us back that. Next, 599 variance request. Any questions, comments, variance? Signage, as far as we require them to announce whether or not they were at variance.
Yes, we want them to do that right from the beginning.
Okay.
But we also want them to understand that, we're not gonna tell them whether they can go for a variance or not to review the project, because we have a lot coming in right now to where they will only go so far with what they're submitting, under the impression that they're gonna get approved for a variance. So that's part of when they're submitting with us, they're assuming they're gonna be approved a variance to do something, instead of attempting to go a step further in providing what the code actually needs. So we wanted at an early stage for them to let us know, but at the same time, we put language in to where staff's not gonna say that we're going forward with the variance until after we've done a review of the project to see what the actual parameters are, whether they can actually meet it without the variance.
I have a question on letter I. This references the denial of variance by planning commission. Any appeal must be to the circuit court within 30 days, and we not divert to council prior to the circuit court.
Yeah, that is inconsistent with what I have in the legally and as far as the appeal process.
We can only check the signs of the reference for that. Where's the legal section?
It's right at the end.
All right, I got it, page 37. It's actually splits, page 36, 37. I guess I asked on this, if we can make I reflect the same as what is in Division
In the
13.
appeal process.
Reads, any person agreed by the decision of the commission may appeal that decision in writing to the county council. Council shall hear such appeal within 30 days of notice of appeal and render its decision in writing within 15 business days of the appeal hearing. Any party aggrieved by the council then may go for common pleas and go to the circuit court, shall be filed in 30 days to receive a written decision from council. So we can just make sure and once again, I know we're still working on grammar.
So what we have on page 37 is repeated on page 23, I here.
It's something to that extent or reference that other section. The other, while you're on that topic, we moved this rather than making it a criminal process, violate a civil process. That became so lengthy conversation with all of the magistrates. It's not that you won't put somebody in jail because they didn't do one little thing. That doesn't take away the fact they're not going to get fined $200 each day for each violation. So it's basically a cleaner process.
All right. Yeah, if we can get I updated.
Sure.
Anything else on the variance request? Yes. Sure. And I should have recognized, you slid in late, that's why I didn't recognize you when we opened up. It's like you're on Senate time or something.
I want to thank each of you for your service, first of all. And I want to thank you for addressing this issue. I am here twofold tonight. I have many constituents that are here tonight, people that live in the area that I represent, District 16. Our area is growing and booming. As I was at the water treatment plant ribbon cutting today, I was talking to Jeff, and I don't think anyone's against growth. I think that we want stability. We want stability in the infrastructure. We want stability in protecting our homes and protecting our farms. We want stability in jobs. It's stability we're looking for. And I appreciate y'all being proactive and working forward to try to knowing what is coming in our direction. I'm also an owner of a farm that's in the area that we have a lot of concerns about. It's a farm that we do not live at, but we sure do enjoy it, and we hope to retire on that farm in a number of years, not ready yet. So I want to thank y'all for addressing this. Also, I would like to be able to share with y'all that that the folks that are here tonight, as me and my family, we've all lived there our whole lives. And again, we're wanting stability. It's really what we're searching for. But I want to thank y'all for addressing this. I need to excuse myself to go to a meeting in Fountain Inn at 7 o'clock. So I'll be a few minutes late. We always like to tease the Senate time. I'll need to excuse myself, but I want to thank you for the opportunity of just sharing briefly, and please call on me if I can be of any help. And I would love to be able to help address this.
Well, I want to thank you for all your service in Columbia and all that you do looking out for Lawrence County. We're lucky to have you as representatives, and we thank you for all you do.
I appreciate that, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so here's under the, I got a question on how we're going in right. For some variances. So that's what the question was. The next section is about the payment period of preliminary plat approval. Now we mentioned this earlier. The way I interpret this is when they get a preliminary approval, they have 2 years. After the preliminary, I obviously it's the final, of course, but that seems like a lengthy time between preliminary and final. What transpires between those two timelines?
Well, if they don't come forward.
Commissioner Smith, he's like that too. I appreciate all your service on the planning commission, and thank you for your comments. Thank you.
If they don't bring a construction site plan in through with the preliminary plat, then we'll have 2 years in other words. Bring a solid plan through for review. Otherwise, that first approval of the plan, we have to look at it again.
So, yeah, preliminary plat, and they got 2 years to submit a construction site plan. Is that the way I'm putting it? I feel like that puts us, and I think there's time lines in these things. And then because then after, we'll get to in a second, after final, they have 12 months to submit a plat, and after that, they deal.
It seems, when you look at the other counties surrounding us, it kind of jumps back and forth on this issue as far as the approval, the length of time for approval of the preliminary plat and the final plat. It goes back and forth between 12 and 24, and it'll flip flop too, to where they'll do the preliminary plat at 12 instead of 24,
And
vice versa.
And I guess the reason I draw concern for me is something that Mr. Roy mentioned earlier. We are getting, not as much as we were 2 years ago, but we are getting multiple subdivisions in the same areas. and they might approve preliminary for 24 months, and somebody else might get turned down because there's a preliminary already approved, or the traffic, or it seems like a lengthy period of time for what ifs. Especially given, I mean, let's just talk about the last 2 years in general, and the housing market's changed drastically. I mean, I figured that we'd have more homes built by now, to be honest, than approved. We got stuff that was approved 2 years ago that hadn't even broke ground. I mean, seems like a long time, and then, but they keep getting reference. There's stuff on that's been approved that we keep referencing in relation to other subdivisions that might not ever happen. 24 months just seems like a long time from preliminary to final.
I think, Dale, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what we've been hearing from the developers is that it's not enough time. What is it, costs or?
So we have had great discussions on this particular subject topic, and I think a lot of it was defining what we mean by preliminary plat and final plat and conceptual plan. So from the day that, from the time that a project appears before the planning commission, and we look at their conceptual plan, which shows the subdivision and how they plan to lay it out, and the lots and the roads and those things that the planning commission look at, and we check those boxes and say, yes, this subdivision meets all of our ordinance. So then once they get that approval, that's when they start spending the engineering dollars to begin to develop the construction plans that may take 6-8 months to develop those set of construction plans that now Jeff and the engineers can develop the DA permits for stormwater, for sewer, for water, and then send that to the state. So then the state takes, I don't know, 4 or 6 months, if you're fortunate, to send you approved permits back to you that says, yes, you can build this project and your stormwater protection is approved and all of that. So now you are 1.5 years out from the moment that the planning commission has approved this plan. Now, until they do all the grading and they finish the grading, now they establish each individual lot. Only then can the surveyor come in and set pins and develop that final plat to be recorded. So that's why we were looking at 24. The developers I talked with said 24 months at least before they can hand us a final plat that says here's lots 1 through 78 with the pins in the ground that define those individual lots. A good example would be Durbin Meadows. It was approved in 2019. And we just, within the last 2 months or so, got the final plat for Durbin Meadows. To the point now that 3 years later, they can begin to build homes.
It's been financially stressful on the applicants also, as far as trying to line up the money that they need to get into that timeline.
All right. So when if they're popping pins and getting the plat prepared, then it's a done deal, right?
If they're to the point that, yes, they have done all of their grading and all of the pads are established to build the homes on and those lots are established. And yes, that project then is ready to start building homes.
So 600,
That's 2 years out.
so 600 right here, the effective period of preliminary plat approval. At that point, subdivision approved. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, it's approved with the planning commission with the conceptual plan.
So
Just the basics, the preliminary plat doesn't necessarily have to show where each building is going. If the final plat actually locks down where each building is going on.
they can go ahead and grade, they're gonna be grading paths, running infrastructure.
After they get their approval from DHEC,
Yes.
is when they can get the grading plan and permit to be able to start grading. And that comes with at the preliminary plat stage after that approval.
I guess we can look at it, planning commission has approved the project conceptually. And then all of the proper construction and permitting is approved by DEC, then the project can be built.
I guess the word preliminary is final.
Well, we actually changed that because we had a problem with not knowing what stage the plat is at. My question, I've always been used to referring to it as the preliminary and final because there are those stages involved. And when you just mentioned plat, and also, not the only thing, is the word plat and plan have been interchanged with each other. You have a construction site plan and you have a plat, those are two different things. And actually, different stages of review and different kinds of review, and they're approved differently. So making sure that we specify that it's the preliminary plat that occurs before the final plat recordation.
So after the preliminary plat's approved and the construction site plan's approved, they start moving dirt.
And then final plat records, it's more strict on, lining up the setbacks and the exact where the buildings are going exactly.
It's covered in the definition.
Moving on. All right, I'm on page 26. Performance bonds and maintenance bonds. One question, 605 B2, 125% requirement, is that industry standard?
I have never dealt with this before, so that's something we're.
Yeah, is that normal, 125% performance bond? requirement?
Yes, so what we're trying to make sure is that if we work, the bond is dealing with the road construction. That if for some reason the contractor was not able to complete construction.
That, you're talking about maintenance bond. I'm asking if, on the performance bond, if 125% is standard requirement. Sandy, do you know?
I do not.
You double check that.
We can double check that, yes.
The maintenance bond, I do like, actually, I really like the maintenance bond. I have one question in section A of that. It says that the bond shall be either cash or surety company approved by Lawrence County Planning Commission. I would prefer that, no offense, that the county attorney approved the surety, unless you really want to do that. Okay. Mr. Cruikshank, sometimes we put that on your office to approve the surety bond companies.
I'll add it to my list of
Okay.
spare time.
Yeah, I think that would be a more appropriate place to have that section. And that's the next last line. And to talk about that, that's, we have comments, had comments in the past about, who's gonna hold them accountable for the roads they put in and the infrastructure they put in. And that's what this maintenance bond will do. We hold it for 3 years to ensure that what they did is actually good. If they hear something that they did not do right, that money would pay to repair the problems.
It is also consistent with our road ordinance.
Absolutely, that's the requirement. So, Vision 10, we're starting to get a lot of requirements. This is where we get to the heavy meat. Section 611. Lots less than 2 acres shall require approval from South Carolina DA for well and center taking selection prior to subdividing. Is that more geared towards smaller divisions, or is that geared towards the large ones?
Answer this, we're gonna be getting to this, and there was a question as to what size of lots, or does he have minimum size lots?
I don't, but my question is, this goes back to the timing thing of when we require that. I feel like that's probably geared more towards what we were discussing earlier on the family exemption of dividing 2 lots. Because the subdivision sections we've already addressed, talk about septic approvals and whatnot. But this is really more building codes, Mr. Bobo's department. They're not gonna issue their permit building until they have seen the copy of the DHEC permit.
That we can
It's
take it out.
really for single lots.
Take it out.
They need to be in there. I mean, you don't want to approve subdivision before. I guess my problem is if somebody came to you with 5 acres and they had 3 kids and turning it into 4, you might want to make sure that, but then again, the kids can build houses on it. So like this basically says if I want to divide my property less than 2 acres, I have to provide you a well and septic tank installation permit prior to subdividing it, but I might not even put a house on it. So can we take that? We probably do need to take it out. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think it can come out because what if you got the public water and sewer?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, so section 6 or
probably
whatever.
not a necessary.
All right. Page 28. We discussed these on multiple occasions in the first reading of 1906. We established the numbers you see in yellow. We got lots of public water sewer at 178, which is half an acre. Lots of public water and septic at 32,670, which is 3/4 of an acre. Lots of well and septic is still an acre. It's what it's been. We did not change that number. The staff has other recommendations for us, so I will turn it over to staff to discuss with us their recommendations.
Okay, this, researching this, obviously we have it down, currently we have it down to where it's based on whether the lot has public water or sewer, public water and sewer, or public water and septic, or whether lots are proposed with well water and a septic tank. In looking at the counties surrounding us, I gave you all some information on Greenwood County, Greenville County, and also Spartanburg County. And Greenville County base its lots they only have a stipulation for whether it has been served by public water. And on the flip side, Spartanburg County only bases it on whether they have sewer. Greenwood County doesn't ask for, it's not an issue. As far as, doesn't have anything to do with what they decide on their lot sizes, so you got three different sizes here, but what I did is I took the smallest single family district, since most of them have zoning, that allows for a detached single family home. And the size lots that they allowed for there. Looking at, we already allow for 1 acre land for lots with well, that are only gonna have well and septic. So technically speaking, you're obviously going down in scale as far as the size of the lots. Also, when it came to Kershaw County, they actually contacted DHEC. They were in the process of, they were in the same situation, trying to figure out lot sizes based on what utilities were going to be served or available. And they contacted DHEC officials, and the DHEC officials stated that a good rule of thumb was that by the time that the DHEC required setbacks are applied, a 30,000 square foot lot, which is approximately 0.67 acres, would be the smallest lot a well and septic tank should be on. And a 20,000 square foot lot, which is approximately 0.46 acres, was the smallest lot for a septic tank with public water. So that was taken into consideration. Their planning commission ultimately decided on 0.75 acres, which is 3/4 of an acre, for a lot that had well and septic, and then a minimum lot size for a lot that had public water and septic at 1/2 acre. So 1/2 acre came in there. Also, South Concord, South Carolina came to the same conclusion as far as the 1/2 acre. So that is where that came in. As far as what DHAC standards actually are, they have setback distances from several things on the lot. So it's gonna depend on what size system you need for the development. And then you're gonna have to meet the setbacks for buildings, property lines, whether there's a private well on site, you have 75-foot setback. The public wells, 100, private wells, 75 feet. Drainage ditch, you have to be 25 feet from. So DHEC really bases the size of the lot that you need to build on meeting their setbacks for the system, particular system you're gonna need. At the same time, they gave Kershaw County, their planning commission, this advice as to what sizes they would need for trying to determine the same thing that we are, so.
I mean, several fund on the septic side of things, and even in this county, if you're in Fountain Inn or if you're in Lincoln Cross Hill, there's a times quarter acre lot size differences on what will and what just there's that much change in the soil between the Greenville County line and Newberry County line, that there can be that much difference even in our little county. So it all, because that's what my hope was, is DHEC would have just a sheet that says you have to have this much, and they don't.
That was helpful to find this because Kershaw County was going through the same question, and this is what the DHEC officials told us, suggested.
All right. Well, I'd love to hear some feedback from council on this, and this is probably one of the biggest debated pieces of this entire ordinance, is these lot widths. We've heard from many constituents, we've dug into what other counties are doing, what's the consensus of council opinion.
The research that she has done on various counties that surround us. I realize, I have looked at the same type of environment around the city of Clinton and the outskirts, of, the ones that are outside of the city limits. And that's why when we was talking about septic tanks, I know they need to be perked, and even though you can perk one over here, when you get over to another side across the street, it won't be able to do it. And so I feel like you don't have to have enough space to be able to
I think
get what you need to get.
I think I heard 1/2 acre on that. Is that a recommendation there? Public water with septic, 1/2 acre.
Yes.
Thoughts, questions? That's a minimum, obviously. I think that goes back to the discussion we were having earlier on at what point does DHEC have to approve the ability to accept?
I guess one of the concerns I have with us debating the lot sizes based on the infrastructure that's there is that some of the comparisons are counties that have zoning. And so they may have a 6,000 square foot lot or a 7,000, 8,000. We're just kind of looking R1, R2, R4. We don't know what that would be when we overlay our county to that. And so we may not have 4% of our county that could handle an R1, which is 6,000. We would be mostly the ones that would be at a 1/2 acre, 3/4 acre or something. So I'd rather be requiring a larger lot right now till we affect some kind of zoning so that we don't figure out later, boy, we missed the ball there. We allowed this and it doesn't really fit what zoning said. So I understand the recommendation and I think it's great, but the comparison I don't think is apples to apples because we
don't know what our county really looks like when you zone it. So comparing a county that's zoned already, it's really hard to throw a number. I would just err on requiring the larger size, just my opinion.
Question, Dale, or staff that has been here for a while, on looking at only at the section that was public water and septic. We were 25,000 square feet, and I assume we've had 25,000 for a while. Definitely at 910, and the one before that, I believe, was there as well. What did we see when we had that requirement of 25,000 square feet? We have people being turned away. We have people saying that's not good enough. What kind of, I'll ask Sean, how many, or we can back up another step. How many subdivisions have you approved with public water and septic in the last 10 years?
We actually approved no new subdivisions. We have some subdivisions filling out. There, the lots of good problems with the lot sizes.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment earlier that when I'm reviewing a subdivision that has septic tanks, septic systems, normally those subdivisions are 3 to 5 acre lots or larger. We're not dealing with smaller lots that require septic tanks.
Do you see that being an issue? Like I said, we're at 25,000, half acres, 21.7, and 3/4 acres, 32.6. Those are the numbers we're playing with. If we set it at a half acre, which would be a couple thousand shy of what it currently is, are we gonna see a flurry of small septic system subdivisions?
Yes, you will.
Think so? So the 25,000 is keeping them away.
Are you talking 25,000 for?
I'm talking public water on septic system.
Calling a half acre lots with septic tanks? I don't see the individuals.
Our usual situation is one to put 2 mobile homes on 1 acre, and he had his church. Dozens of those have issues with 2 acre. The property was not divided, but it was amounted to a half acre.
Now it would have to be if we approve this. And honestly, that's kind of the exact, exactly what I'm worried about hurting with this larger requirement on this particular item. Not, we'll deal with public water and sewer in a second. But on the septic tank and public water, I feel like we're focusing on these big subdivisions and we're forgetting about the little guy. This guy, acre and a half, or just has an acre. They were blessed to get an acre and they want to give half of it to their children to live next to them. That's the, those are the people we also need to consider, because this also governs that. That's the small guy. We need to look out for as well. Because 3/4 of an acre requirement will bump it up even more for this small guy. And that's why I'm asking the
Yeah,
subdivision
I think,
question.
yeah, in that instance, I think you would make it difficult.
That's if we go to that half acre, which is like I said, just shy of the current requirement. Obviously geared towards our property owners, our current property owners. Is it going to cause a heavy influx of outside development? And that's what I want to make sure we avoid. And I agree with you that I don't think we'll see that. We'll see more.
Yeah, I'm primarily dealing with the either minor or major subdivisions that with septic tanks. As I said, most of those are larger lots. And I'm glad for that, because it does give us a good mix in the county for whatever you would like to purchase. But for the smaller ones, probably building code suits those much more like that.
Mr. Chairman, specific to what you referenced, I think there is the family exception and a option for a variance with the planning commission if they have a smaller lot and it was gonna be family, but that's already built into this.
Some of that depends on whether you're gonna have a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom dwelling on it too. Rain field.
That's correct.
I'm always looking out for the next one. I'm always looking out. That's why I feel like sometimes you don't see the problem that exists when you continue to shrink. And then you make a problem and you pay for that problem the rest of your life. To fix it. Just looking at some places where some people have done that. Water and sewer really is setting up on their land. Rising up, and that's not the environment you need people to live in.
Yes, sir.
You could. Like going to the larger amount, the one you have in yellow. It's gonna be hard for us to bigger tracks into smaller tracks because it's not gonna meet a definition. They come in for variance. It's not gonna meet the definition of a hardship because I wanna make something small. So, you could put a requirement there, and there's lots of times that we ask, if they are coming in for a small lot, we ask them ahead of time to provide a protest. Make sure that the lot does perk prior to granting a variance for a smaller lot.
All right. When we go to second reading and take official votes, I'm gonna make a motion that we either keep it where we've had it for a while, or look at the half-acre option on that particular section. Like I said, I've had people reach out to me that own some smaller lots that are concerned about their ability to turn one into two. And that's what I'm concerned with on that aspect. But I'll wait and make a formal motion on that at the September 13th council meeting. On lots with public water and public sewer. Did you go over your recommendations again there? We I had the half-acre, the 21,780. But I believe what you're recommending is that we consider reducing that because we're double anybody else close to us, or really triple in some cases. So you're
Yes, it was suggested going from 8,000 to 10,890, which would be a quarter of an acre.
So my question to that would be, currently, and we'll get to that section in a second, the open space subdivision, we have a quarter acre. If we left open space at a quarter acre and we put water sewer at quarter acre, what would be the incentive to develop an open space subdivision?
What would be an incentive?
Besides the natural beauty, of course, but if they're out there making money, they're not gonna do that. Because we still have got to go back to your chart on that. It's still at
Yeah,
10
it's
acres.
kind of hard to compare these two, because to me, they're two different animals, in the type of developments that they are and what they require, normally. And that's something that I don't think we'll get into that discussion when we get to that section. But as far as what was suggested here by staff, it just seemed like a logical step to go from the acre to the half acre to the quarter acre. But it's still above the 8,000 square feet.
Yeah, I definitely get that recommendation. And honestly, with flow great with surrounding counties and other items, my concern is I would like to encourage developers to build the open space style subdivision, to get to one, keep green space, to provide nature for families that will be there and give them that aspect. But if I'm a developer and I'm looking at a 20-acre lot, and you're telling me that either direction I go is going to be a 1/4 acre lot, but on one hand, I've got to develop common space, I've got to preserve 20 of it for trees, or I can just go in there and bulldoze the whole thing and build houses on every square inch. And I'm trying to make money, I'm going to go after. And that's what I'm like, if they're both a 1/4 acre, what's the incentive to do open space?
The incentive of open space, for the most part, the developer, the builder that's gonna do them or more of your green builders. Also, you'll be able to have a smaller lot width in the open space, under the open space standards, is what is being proposed. Same, it's usually the same amount of density. The trade-off in being able to develop on smaller lots with smaller widths to them is that they provide more open space. So it's like the same density. However, you're allowed to build on smaller lots, smaller units. So sometimes even it's an incentive that can be written into the code where since they are providing so much more open space, might be able to throw into where they can have one or two extra units as an incentive. So it's something that you usually add later as far as.
I do not think 1/4 acre is the best place to go on that. However, we will negotiate somewhere in the middle. I'd love to hear what other council members think on that.
Are we talking about, are we going backwards and talking about decreasing lot size of public water, public sewer? That's 21,000.
That's what's being recommended by staff, yes.
So then,
That's what's being recommended, yes.
Well, no, because right currently we have 8,000, so staff is recommending 10,000.
Council has already passed a first reading that requires 21,780. So that is the number we're working off of.
I thought, this whole thing was about, or a lot of it was building these subdivision on little small lots. 21,000 is not quite a half acre. Why can't we not just leave it at that?
And that's what we're discussing. We're discussing what council wants to do on that front. So your recommendation, we leave it at half acre.
Leave it at half acre.
Anybody else?
Half acre, not much.
Bigger than my lot.
And keeping in mind, we got 6,000 roughly approved total in the county, including the municipalities. So we do have a lot out there that are already been pre-approved, they're smaller than this, but. So the only comment I'm hearing is the half acre for public water and public sewer.
Get around that, it's gonna be annexed.
And actually use open space, yeah, correct. That's for
Don't forget, this also includes individuals coming in front of us asking to subdivide a lot too. So now you're gonna say the minimum size anyone can have is a half acre. No matter if you got water, sewer, water, septic.
no. Water and septic, there's different categories. We're only addressing right this particular second, public water and public sewer.
But you're wanting to keep it at a half an acre.
That's what we're discussing right now.
Right. I'm saying if somebody comes and wants to, an individual wants to come and make it small. we can do that.
Do you see, is that anybody can answer, Mr. Bobo, Mr. Stackfield? Do you see requests on lots that small to be subdivided?
Have public water and sewer.
Yes. No. Public water and public sewer.
Normally,
or smaller lots. It just depends on what the county wants to do.
It's a way of steering development towards where the utilities already exist. That's it, you're steering your density. Right.
The only recommendation I've heard is that we stay at half.
Well, the concern that I want to express is your concern. And Lisa done a great job, I think, on page 33. In that, what she has tried to do within the ordinance is describe what a traditional development looks like versus a cluster development. What a conventional subdivision would look like versus a conservation subdivision. And I think what we want is protection of our resources, protection of our trees. And that is the trade-off between doing a conservation subdivision, as you see there, that was published by North Carolina State University, which is one of the leading authorities on how to protect your resources and protect your beauty and your way of life. And you can do that through a conservation subdivision. I think we would all agree what we do not want in Lawrence County is a county full of the traditional development, where everything, as you said, the trees are taken away, and all you have is house after house after house after house. So that's what I don't want to do, is take away the incentive to do a conservation project.
All right. Guys have the opportunity to be heard on that. Seems half acre is the vote consensus on the public water, public sewer. I think my motion, when we come back on this, on the public water and septic tank, is that we leave it alone. I don't think we've had a problem in the past. I don't think we're anticipating a problem in the future. We have not seen any issue with what we had in place. I'm gonna go with old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I will be making a motion not to reduce it to a half, but that we leave it at 25. That's gonna be my motion. So then I'll get anybody off guard. Move forward. Number 11. Multifamily development. So standard outline of this division will pertain to all multifamily development regardless of whether the parcel is subdivided. How will that person ever look in the subdivision ordinance for those requirements? Or will there be an additional other ordinance for multifamily? Or would that fall in building code?
This is a case that the lot is large enough. We are having issues with and people wanting more homes on a single lot. In other words, not subdividing. So we have this issue with Belleville Parks and as far as
I guess I interpret multifamily more as townhomes and apartments. Because we have a mobile homes, or we're pulling mobile homes out of the current one. We have one on the books today, absolutely. We're gonna make it mobile homes its own thing. When I read multifamily here, I was more of the interpretation that it would be duplexes and townhomes, apartments, so on and so forth.
okay, yes, that's more traditional. There are ways, there are other types of development that you can have more than one single family detached home as a group in clustered fashion. We can take it out. Trying to think if there's anything else that would impact if we did it.
My only question on 615 was, it says that whoever's going to do this has to abide by these rules. That how is somebody who's not subdividing the property going to know to look at the subdivision ordinance to get the rules? That was the question. Are we going to have the rules elsewhere for them to abide by?
It's not going up.
617, all proposed multifamily developments must be served by public water and sewer. We have many in this county that are outside of sewer availability. I don't think that we need to require sewer for multifamily, unless you want to set a cap number.
How about community? A community septic or
When you say community septic,
on the, it says it's multiple family subdivision, they have the community septic area instead of individual septic.
I guess, but I'm, once again, back to the little guy. Somebody's got 5 acres and they're wanting to put 3 duplexes on that property. I do not know this for a fact, but I imagine she would put in 3 septics for duplexes, then it would be to put in 1 large one for multi. That's once again, it's back to the little guy that's trying to do something for themselves.
So do you want this set on, do you want it set according to the number of units?
I can get on board with that. I don't want some research done as to what that number should be,
Okay,
but I can get on board if you wanted, if we had a requirement, if you were doing more than X number of units, it has to be public water sewer, but I want to make sure that
okay.
that we're not going to hurt current property owner and what we're doing.
Just make sure the little man not gonna hurt the little man under them, evidently, because they try to make money off of people who are less fortunate also. So you have to make sure you're watching out for everybody. You know, they don't need to live in substandard. They don't need to live in substandard.
Well, I'm on septic system where you say my house is substandard.
If you wanna put yourself there, you can put yourself there. I don't know where it is, but I'm just saying, you know, I understand that people want to make money, you talking about the little man, but I don't like for people to make money off of people less fortunate and they living in worse conditions. And I really think you need to look out for the conditions of other people also, and I think sometimes the little man give you exactly what you want. And sometimes they don't know what they want.
If we're going to have an affordable housing discussion, if we require sewer, that means they're going to have to most likely be, if not in, very close to the city, which means higher property taxes and everything else, which trickles down to the person under them. Versus if they can build a duplex in Mountville, that rent's going to be a lot cheaper than that rent's going to be 2 miles down the street here in the city.
I understand that, but I just don't want the condition to be that is not acceptable.
Well, I don't think whether they're on sewer or they're on septic will dictate much of the condition of the house.
Can I make one comment about community septic systems? You have to be very careful. They're typically owned and operated by either the owner of the property or on the backs of people owning or renting in the duplex. So that usually incurs higher HOA fees, higher other fees. And the bigger issue is sometimes the maintenance is not done. I realize people think there's not a lot of maintenance for septic tanks, but they fail all the time. So if you have a large septic system or a lot of septic systems in a general area, public sewer is much more environmentally friendly in those situations. But the bigger issue with community septics is if DHEC gets involved in a failure situation, they're usually going to come to people like us and say, we want you to take this system over. Not opposed to community septics if they're done right and they're set up right, they can work. I've seen them work around lake communities a lot of times, on campgrounds, things like that. Just if there's a process in the review on community septic, we don't necessarily sign off on septic tanks, but community septic, we might want to at least have some input as to how it's being structured, who's maintaining it, how's it going to run, what's that going to look like? Because 15 years after it's in service, we want problems. So that's my only concern, sometimes on community septic.
Just be clear, I'm not encouraging subpar living conditions. I just think requiring public sewer for duplexes, single duplexes is a little far-fetched.
Yeah.
Table 11 on page 32. Discussion on recently, so I would like some discussion from staff on the townhomes, not duplexes, but townhomes. We got a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. Max dwellings per unit 6. And then you got minimum interior lot area 2640. So explain to me what the minimum lot area of 6,000 governs. Is that the entire building?
The entire, let's say parcel. Okay. 6,000 square feet for.
Well, let's back up a second. I don't like parcel because you could be putting 20 townhomes on a 20-acre lot. So the 6,000 square feet lot.
Okay, I think we're using the same term here, yeah, the same thing. For individual unit lots, we proposed at 2640. This has come from, actually speak with Mr. Bevo also and Dale on this. We've been talking to several people coming in that want to do townhomes. They can't financially meet what's required as far as that 30-foot width or more than 30 feet of width or the 6,000 square foot lot. It's just too big for them to put a townhome on it. They can't afford to do that. It also creates a really huge lot for a townhome. So it's expensive. It's a lot bigger than it really needs to be for a townhome. So this is an attempt in talking to, we had 2 or 3 this last month that came in, and we really couldn't help them out as far as reducing the lot except through the variance process, and that's
So the 2640.
that comes from, if you take the 24-foot width
Okay.
and multiply it by 100,
But
110.
is that include, is that from the sidewalk to the backyard? Like what's that?
That's the entire lot.
And that's what I'm asking. Is that stud to stud? I mean, we're talking about townhomes here.
Yes. We actually asked them, we said, where's your cutoff point? What sounds reasonable to you? And I asked them, could you do 25 feet? They said 24 would be better. They said, but then once you get it, they said, according to your code, once you get 24 feet in width, all of a sudden you've got a backyard that's like 2 bowling alleys long. It's just way too much land and territory for it. So you have to come down in the square footage of the lot also. Being more familiar myself with form-based codes, a lot of times you'll just give the width of the lot and maybe the total square footage, and that determines the depth or what the depth of the lot is going to be. You're more concerned with the visual form of the architectural scale of what it's going to look like than you are how narrow it is. So
And that's why I'm concerned with the 6,000 up the top there is kind of the seating. That's why I asked if that's for like the entire dwelling, like the building.
that's, to be honest with you, it's confusing in our code, and they asked us the same thing. They said, is that for the entire tract of land that we're building on, or is that per lot? And I think that's per lot, per dwelling unit lot.
Then we were gonna have to change that. Because nobody in Lawrence County is buying 6,000 square foot townhomes. I assume you did the research on the 24, that's the,
Yes, yeah.
so I wonder, and we might have this later, I see you have the apartments, do we not need to be considering a density? The density scenario versus the actual square footage on the lot size, so many per acre, I think would be a lot more appropriate. I have a number in my head on what that should be, but we're gonna have to change that, because otherwise it's, I mean, even in the table, it conflicts itself.
Okay, you're talking about the next dwelling units per attached group is 6, is that what you mean?
I'm good with that, but I think we, as far as physical rooftop structures, we need to have a density rating. Or it can be, it can be a, I mean, an apartment, you got 8 units per acre, seems a little low personally. But we could say 8 townhomes per acre, or 10 townhomes per acre, whatever we wanted to do there. I would
Yeah,
definitely-
that's what we currently have.
Okay,
Is less than an acre, it's 8 per acre. But then 1 to 5 acres, it's 12 units per acre, and 1 to 5 acres, it's 14 units.
so we would ask that we look at some other counties and compare that. I can think of multiple places where, especially on the apartment side, that there's more than 8 apartments in an acre. And like I said, is that apartments or is that buildings? It says units, so I assume it's actually apartments.
Yeah, apartments.
But let's take that, I think we need to do a little more research on this 6,000 square feet, and I think it needs to be a density. And then down here at the bottom where you have the interior lot area, that's what governs the size of the townhomes.
Correct.
That would be the conflict on our table there. Any other questions, comments on multifamily?
If a developer goes in this plan is for single family house. And he puts these townhouses in that same subdivision. So that's my concern.
You can put them in the development as a whole, like the whole project. But you would have different rules on the section this townhome versus the section this single family.
So you could not have a single family house here, townhouse, single family house. The townhouses won't have to be in their own space. You can't mix them up with the houses, so to speak.
I would, do we have that in our ordinance? I mean, you wouldn't, I mean, a developer would not do that. But other than, are they prevented is my question.
Right now, they can pretty much do what they want.
So we need to add where they're, not intermingled.
Typically, townhomes require platted lots.
Right.
And I think what he's concerned about is maybe a mixed residential development, is that?
No, what I hear is concern is that you're going, 4,000 square foot house, townhome, 4,000 square foot house, townhome. I know developing their right minds when do that, but we need to make sure they can. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just thinking the developer, he's not gonna like it half or 21,000 square foot. And he's gonna like put a townhouse on there and all. See him at your game.
The only conceptual plan that I have seen has these subdivisions, detached homes in one area. But the townhomes were segregated and landscaped off in another area, but there was not mixed in.
Even in single family, there's a development on 76, and it's right outside city limits. But even inside of that single family plan, they have a certain style home in the front on larger lots. And then they go to a smaller lot, a little smaller house, and there's even a smaller one in the back, so they even stay in their own subdivisions, different sizes. But if they were doing townhomes mixed with single family, they're gonna have just a section of townhomes and then a section of.
I'm really just in a development plan, and subdivision, and then you want to call it a buffer or area, whatever, then they've got town.
So, but I think your concern is to make sure they can't. So I
Mix it up.
so let's,
Are you concerned about individual owners?
no, he's worried about intermingling the style of. Yeah, let's make sure that's in here that you can't do that.
Okay.
But you hit the nail on the head, though, they're not gonna build that because it's not gonna be.
But greater things have happened, so we'll make sure that it's in our ordinance.
That is correct.
All right, any other multifamily questions? I would add, this is on the list, let's make sure our densities are appropriate. I think I like to see some comparisons. Make sure we're in the right ballpark. All right, open space. One question and then we'll address the sizes. 622. Open space buffer within the development must be maintained by the developer and or HOA. A lot of, especially our older subdivisions in this county, were written up for an HOA to be formed, developed, take over the area, so on so forth. And in many cases, that did not happen. Nobody owns. It's just there. So my question is, if an HOA is not formed, who becomes responsible for maintaining those open space areas after the developer's done and gone?
Well, what typically happens whenever an HOA breaks up is the property owner becomes responsible for their property, but this is our own language that we have now, so.
Which I guess, we've never dealt with before, Sandy, I'm gonna ask you this question. The land that would be part of the open space, that can be deeded to the developer, I guess deeded to the HOA once.
You see it both ways. The problem with a lot of the ones that are out there right now is the landowner, developer will keep it in their name. And they're dead and gone. And then the problem arises as to maintenance. For example, roads. I see so many out there that 5 houses over here, 5 houses over here. And here's a road that's still in the name of the original developer who's been dead for 20 years. That's when you guys get the question, how about I come fix my road? Find out it's not their road. Typically, it's going to go to the HOA and some provisions for the perpetuity of the HOA should be provided.
Do we require an HOA to be formed for major subdivision? Can we require that?
I know that you require it, you can certainly make one of the conditions of development.
We've got it in the checklist, it was part of our code, so where it's part of this middle
And whether
requirement,
it's
the
down
application is to provide that a statement. I'll have to take a look at that for you.
All right, table 12. Are there any other questions about the verbiage in the space before we get to the table? All right. Walk me through this table. Mainly on the interior lot line.
Okay, currently, we've got, that requires 25% total open space and 10% of total in common for open space. And we have 7,000 square feet as a minimum interior lot. Open space development is it's a development concept that relies heavily on reducing the amount of impervious surface or stormwater runoff that you have on a site. So it involves more clustering of the homes. It allows for smaller lot sizes to be able to cluster the homes. And most of the time it's highly recommended for those sites that are difficult to build on because they're restricted either due to wetlands or flood zone areas. It can either be topographic issues on site. So it allows for even smaller developments on smaller amount of area, like 5 acres, 10 acres, to be able to allow for the use of those lots. Because of how it is set up, if you look at, once again, if you look at other counties around us, they all are based on the smaller lots that are allowed, the more open space that has to be provided. So we currently have this open for a Midland site up 5 acres, which is fine. This adding additional acreage here to allow them to build on just provides more options for the developer, more options for the use of the land. Because of how much oversight that this takes in the review process and making sure that it's done properly, because we've actually had quite a few come through that they handed us. I haven't been here that long, but I've seen 3 of them so far that claim that they were open space development, and there's no way I would consider them open space conservation development, because they had the amount of land and impervious surface that they were recommending. Was the plan bad? No, but I would not call it an open space development. I think what happened here is our language comes directly from Greenville County. They have a lot of standards for this development that we don't have in our code. So I think missing those standards is what is missing the whole point of how this development is supposed to be done. So my suggestion would be, I put some options in here, some recommendations as to how it's been done in other places. And keep in mind that some of these other counties actually require up to 60%, 65% open space, which is more than what we're requiring here. But my recommendation would be is, if you don't feel comfortable doing it this way, as long as we are able to lower the minimum width for multiple family homes to allow for townhomes, so that's opening up some area there. If you don't feel comfortable with this, I would just take it out, because it's not a fair representation of what open space development is. And it's difficult to apply because we don't have all the standards in here that we're supposed to have.
Well, I like to put them in there. I'm not opposed to this open space and prefer it over stacking houses beside each other. My greatest concern at the particular moment is this 5-acre one on the right, 3,000 square foot lot area requirements. That means I could cram 14 houses in an acre. If I want to.
That's what I said, you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful with how you're doing this. And another statement that I've seen before is that a good way of controlling that is applying a maximum impervious surface allowance. And a lot of times they'll do that at 60%, 50 or 60%. And that controls your density. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up to y'all as a discussion on that.
That's, yeah. I definitely want to see us change that 3-acre thing. That's not gonna apply. I mean,
3,000 square feet.
I mean, basically you're putting 36 homes on 2.5 acres. Which is, I can't fathom. I have 2 acres right now in a subdivision. I couldn't imagine there being 30-some houses on that.
Well, I see most of them start at like 5 acres, but we don't have to
Is it
start
5
that
acres?
small.
5 acres doesn't concern me. It's the square footage of the. I can, and the way I reckon, or way I see this is you give more green space to get smaller lot widths, or more smaller lot sizes. And what I'm reading here is you got 40% green space, 7,000, that's the middle column. I'd be willing to consider that. However, the big one's still a 1/4 acre, which is 20 acres. But read the last column, gonna go, there's no way we're even gonna consider that. Yeah, well, I want to drop the 3,000 square feet lot.
Say 10 acres or less, so.
So the middle column would allow 6 houses an acre. Do we have a maximum acreage? I'll go give a prime example where that actually does work. That's in front of the street.
I'm sorry, you know, I'm just looking at this. This is, I handed this to y'all. This is the language in Greenville County, that we adopted it from. This isn't the exact language, but it's the highlights of what it includes that we don't have in ours. So if you look at this, you can probably determine what would work for you, what you'd be interested in.
Because it does work. So right here on Main Street, you got the cottages right across from, or not quite across from the old district office. And there's probably a dozen and a half, 20 homes in there, give or take, and they're itty bitty, but it's only that small. Like I definitely don't want that over 100 acres, because it would be miserable. Sarah,
I agree too, that's why I said I'm concerned about allowing this for all development over 100 acres. We have that stipulation, so that's where my concern came in. I don't think it's something that should be done on such a big level like that.
on the, whatever you submitted to us, 50%.
Option 2.
Yeah, option 2, it says 6,000, you got in our table here 3,000, that's supposed to be 6, because that would make a difference. Or do you mean for it to be 3?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
I would like to see some kind of cap on anything less than 4 acre. As long as we're a 4 acre lot. All right. Anything less than 4 acre, we need to see some sort of cap.
Okay, on density? On density or size? On the size, okay.
To consider, so it's something I agree with. Because once again, I think striving for green space and keeping a rural area rural while recognizing that there are people who don't want to cut grass, because that's a burden on lower income people. Time, when there's single mothers who work 2 jobs, they don't have time to cut grass. I recognize that needs out there, but I don't want to see a 100 acre plot with 14 homes an acre. That's ridiculous.
I agree.
Any comments, concerns, questions, council
I think this option for higher density is necessary in some parts of the county. And until we determine what those parts are, I just want to be more conservative on what we're doing.
leaving the 4 acre one that's already established?
In the open space residential development standards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question is, if we do that, are we gonna include the rest of the standards? Because,
We obviously haven't had a chance to review this.
okay. Because in doing this, we don't have all the information that we need to view.
Correct. I mean, we can't rush through this not knowing. We have so many questions that are good questions that we have to have answers to.
I'd like to see it, you bring it to us, put it in here. We want to go right. We want to be able to have this option. Like I said, our main drive is to preserve green space. So the open space subdivision does that better than any other option we have in this packet. But I definitely think this, especially here, the 1/4 acre for open space is the lowest we're interested in going as far as lot size. Any other questions, comments? We're almost done with the first section, then we're gonna adjourn to the
Jim, I started to say, we're gonna set an expiration date on this stuff.
You usually do. I was
I just wasn't quick enough.
I got you. See, I got you covered anyway.
Really?
All right, next section is enforcement. Any questions, comments, concerns on the enforcement section? All right, I do have a question. 826. I would love for us to look at verbiage. This being in black ink, does that mean it was in the old one?
So it's not further like
Concern is, it reads, Orange County Council by through its designated official shall have the duty and responsibility to enforce all provisions of the codes adopted by this ordinance. A little period right there, and that'd be it. But the rest of it reads, as may be deemed proper for the welfare, safety, health of the citizens of Orange County within the unincorporated areas. I feel like some of those terms are objective. Opens it up, and it opens it up way too much. I might sit down where I'm talking about. Mr. Kirkpatrick, what's your opinion on that?
I think the language is in there because the charge to any county government governing body is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of its citizens. So I think that's why it's there.
And I like seeing it there because I feel like that's what it's supposed to be about. That's why I kept pushing about some people, really, you have good people who develop property, and you got some bad people who develop property. And you're gonna have to be looking out for the person who's gonna be suffering from a person who give them a bad place to live. And I think we see it in a lot of places, but we see it and we don't see it. So I really feel like we need to be always looking out for the welfare of the citizens of this county. Even though it might be subjective, I still feel like we should always be looking out for their welfare.
But I think what you'll find is there's citizens, including ones in this room, that will tell you that even with our expanded ordinance here and our better improved requirements, that we are still not living up to the statement in this ordinance.
We probably not, but maybe we're working toward it. I like this. And I know it's gonna be a hard job, even for the staff. Sometimes I don't even think we have enough staff to carry out some of the things that we are putting down in this particular ordinance. Because the call for enforcement and the calls to make sure that everybody complies with whatever they need to do to complete the application is gonna call for people to be working together. It's gonna call for us to have more people. And occasionally, I think sometimes we stretch people out sometimes. And but I'm hoping that we'll be able to do this, and if we need to.
I think you can add the language in there, referring back to the purpose of the ordinance. Section. Eyes are gone blurry. 542, section 1. Make you deem proper under the purposes of this ordinance.
I didn't know we've had prior litigation, but also wording in our ordinance. So, not in this one, in another one. I do have a question on the appeals process. We do have in there about going to the county council, but it has the appeals of violation going to the planning commission. My question is, that proper? Make sure those go. And when would the violation be an issue? Is this going to be Dale rides by and sees that the lot width's 45 feet instead of 50?
Well, I think what the intent is here is that the planning commission makes a decision of which we're not in favor of. And consideration by the planning commission.
I saw this as a bill of fine.
If the code violation. That's gonna be separate. Separate issue. You can take the planning commission out of it and let any agreed party take it straight to the county council.
Can you give me I'm looking for an example of a $200 violation? What would that, Dale or whomever, what would that look like?
This would be if the subdivision is approved and somebody violates the approval, which is probably going to fall through Chuck's office at that point, as far as permitting or approving electrical, plumbing, whatever it may be.
And that's actually the note I made. If it's on electrical plumbing or anything like that, would that not go to the construction board of appeals?
Good, or go straight to magistrates.
I guess my question on the penalties and violations of the ordinance would be if somebody did their lots too small or didn't do their roads the proper width. Is that the kind of stuff we're looking for on the violations here?
Could be anything regarding any violation of the ordinance. Once the planning commission has approved it, at, say 6,000 square feet, and somebody goes in and puts in 4,000 square feet, they violate the ordinance. You know, if you want to take it straight to that, any violation like that, they're going to write uniform summons, code violation. The code being not the plumbing code, the code being this.
Right, and that's gonna go to
So they're gonna write an ordinance violation, and that's gonna go before the magistrate.
So there's really nothing to appeal, it's going to the magistrate.
But once they write that ticket, they're gonna give you the 30-day heads up. Hey, by the way, you've violated section so and so. You've got X days to cure that defect, which they have to do in code violations.
Okay, we might need to take a look at that section, because it makes sure it's follow the proper channel and save the jumps today. All right, last section. Of adjournment, Mr. Gerald, legal. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns on the Division 14 of the ordinance? All right. Thank you, council members, staff, citizens who've struggled through this with us. We are going to, at another meeting, continue this process. I need to go through. I believe we put a good dent in discussions so far. If I have a desired time to meet again. Next Thursday too soon? All right, let's go ahead and plan for next Thursday, same place, same time. Get that agenda with you on the item we discussed tonight, that we had questions on, and then we will continue the ordinance. Review the items that we discussed, that we want more clarification, information on staff, discussion of one house per traffic. Working on the traffic study on how we determine impacted intersections versus an actual times that the impacted intersections, many miles as opposed partial. So we'll get some more clarification on that in our options. Utilities plan, whether or not we're going to require that prior to preliminary, or we're going to require post preliminary. Apartments and townhomes. Maybe a little more research comparison to local other communities. Or as lot width densities. I think you got good numbers there on the sizes of the density. I think that was something we need to look into more. Then of course, the space we just discussed. I think the consensus on council is that we stick with the minimum corridor. But we'd like you to give some more information, and it's actually on the next, first page on the next one, on space standards. So next meeting, we'll discuss a little more on the standards that we're looking at. And this last thing, we just remember the code violation process on the recognize that there's variance overthrows, appeals, but this is specifically discussing a violation of the ordinance. As explained, we know what would be issued as a code violation, which goes straight to magistrate court. So we just want to make sure the verbiage and the language properly addresses the need. And those are the things I had written down. Is there anything else, council, that we've used so far that we need more explanation staff on? All right. I appreciate all y'all's hard work. I know y'all spent many grueling hours going over this. I'll thank the county attorney, his office, for going through all of this and making sure that they're legal. I know that's a hard part, trying to compare to our old ordinance and make sure that everything's processed through. I look forward to seeing you all next Thursday. We'll do it again. Any questions, comments, concerns before we adjourn? Thanks, sir. Yes, sir. All right, here none, I'll call for motion to adjourn. Second by Mr. Crowe. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 7, all those opposed? 6-1, Mr. Hanson in opposition.